Welcome to PEP Talks with Eric, where we shift gears from negative feedback loops and drive towards the life we truly want. I'm your host, Eric Ayers. I believe in the power of Ubuntu. I am because we are. Together, we'll explore how connections fuel our growth and create amazing experiences. In this podcast, we'll tune out the noise of the world and tune into what we really want and what really matters. Guys, thank you so much for joining us in another episode of PEP Talks with Coach Eric. I'm super excited for today's guest. All right, so Mark and I, we met a year and a half, 2 years ago in a coaching class. And there was just something about Mark that I was attracted to. And so long story short, we became coaching buddies, and he would coach me, I would coach him. And this created a friendship, a mentorship, and a colleague. And I have greatly valued the relationship that he and I have built. So I asked him to come on the show because, well, let me tell you a little bit about Mark. So Mark Maynard is a leadership coach, hospitality consultant, and a keynote speaker who empowers leaders to achieve bold goals. And as the founder of Maynard Consulting, he draws on decades of experience with Danny Meyer's Union Square Hospitality Group, where he developed teams, created brands, and drove business profitability. So today, Mark continues in this venture by helping entrepreneurs optimize the customer journey, employee experience, and financial performance in that order. With an ACC credential from the International Coaching Federation, he partners with clients to overcome obstacles, foster personal and professional growth. And he serves as an entrepreneur in residence at Cornell University and lectures at Columbia Business School and in NYU. So besides all of that, he's a really cool dude. So please welcome Mark. Mark, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks, Eric. It's great to be here. You made me sound really great. Thank you. I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's all true. Like I'm
Likewise.
I'm not blowing smoke here. So like I said, Mark and I have worked together. We know each other really well. And to start this off, I want to dive directly into the order in your bio of customer journey, employee experience, and financial performance.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about why that order.
Yeah, I guess I write it that way because I think that's really important, but I kind of see it as a structure that each one of those relies on the other one. So I almost think of it like a three-sided pyramid where each one of those is a wall, and those walls are all leaning in and they rely on one another. And if we overemphasize one, if one of those sides is too big or too small, the whole thing will tumble. And in actual fact, there's something that I didn't talk about, and you didn't mention, but that is really important, is that the foundation of this pyramid is our purpose. And so if you're thinking about this three-sided pyramid, all of those sides are resting on the purpose. And so within an organization, I believe that without a purpose, the customer journey, the employee experience, and financial performance will fail.
I got you. And I like where you went there. I love that because what came up before mentioning purpose was balance and foundation. So
Right.
Must be a solid foundation. And then we create this balance,
Right.
which you've known me long enough to know that balance and alignment are like, if we're even remotely out of alignment, we're going to be teetering one way or the other.
Right.
And man, yeah, purpose. Let's go for it. Because to me, this is a twofold process because yes, the business needs a purpose, but businesses are filled with people,
Right.
and that brings a different purpose. So speak into purpose and the value of
Yeah.
purpose.
That is something that I've been really exploring since I was, since I was a kid. I didn't call it that, and I didn't realize that I was exploring my purpose. But it's interesting because part of my journey is that I started my life. I identified as a designer. And I went to college for landscape architecture. So I graduated with a degree in landscape architecture, but I had always worked in restaurants and growing up in high school and college and even a little bit after college. And I was working for a landscape architect in New York City, and I needed a little more money. So I started working at a restaurant down the street from the architecture firm. For a couple of years, I did both, working in the architecture firm and working at this restaurant. And it was interesting. Over that time, I felt this change going on in myself, and I found myself yearning for more human connection. And I found that working in hospitality was, you know, full of human connection. I mean, I was a maitre d' at a restaurant in New York City. And over a period of years, I realized that my purpose is to make people happy. And it was kind of a game at first. I literally loved the challenge of working in a restaurant. And over time, as I grew and as I eventually left my career of landscape architecture, which was very hard to do. And as I did that, I became more whole because I wasn't straddling two worlds. I moved fully into the world of hospitality. And so many times in life, we try to straddle these two worlds, and we have two opposing forces. One's pulling us one way, one's pulling us the other. And once I made that commitment, things started to open up. Both for me, I began to learn that my purpose is to help other people and make them happy. But also the universe kind of opened up for me. Opportunities opened up for me because I'm guessing my performance got better because I wasn't ambivalent, because I was really focused
Yeah.
on things. And as that happened, I became a manager. And then I realized, well, my purpose isn't just to make people happy. My purpose is to help people. My purpose is to help people get better at their job or learn some life skills. And, fast forward 30 years, that's what I do now as a consultant. I help people get better at something they're interested in. And so now what I say is, I help them reach their potential. I help them fulfill their potential. And organizationally, I help them sort of narrow the gap between what they really want to do, what their aspirations are, and then their ability to achieve them. So that has really become my purpose over the years. But it's only been a few years that I've really clearly articulated it. And has been a great journey. And you've been a part of that. That's why we did that. Well, that's why I did that coaching
Yeah.
course together. And then, you inspired me to keep pushing and go for my credential and all of that stuff.
I mean, that's what coaches do, right?
That's
Right.
right. We help people overcome obstacles.
Absolutely. This journey fascinates me because it's a similar journey to what we all experience, and it comes down to so many different avenues. One thing that comes to mind is a question I would love your input on.
Mhm.
What do you think gave you permission or offered you that insight to say, I need to pivot into this realm that what you believed was to make people happy ultimately ended up being finding your purpose of improving people's lives. So when you're straddling the fence and you're realizing these being pulled two different ways, what gave you permission or what was that up to say, I'm going to let this world go so I can pursue this life?
Well, first of all, it was a journey. It was a process, and, it wasn't easy. And, so many of us, we identify a certain way, or we wanted a dream. We came up with this dream when we were younger. For me, I saw myself as a designer since the age of 10. So at the age of 27, to make that change, I had to grapple with shame because I had taken classes, I had gotten a degree, I identified a certain way. I even had long hair and wore black all the time. Like that was me. I was the artsy designer.
Yeah.
So it took courage, I guess. And I think that is so much of, I don't feel I had external motivations. Like some people really feel like they're trapped. I didn't feel I was trapped, but I felt I was giving up on something. And that is what gave me a certain amount of shame because I didn't want to give up on my own dream. No one had told me I was a designer. I told myself I was a designer.
Ooh. Okay.
And so to eventually realize, wait, people like me as this other thing too. People like me as the person who motivates them. People like me as the person who leads them. I did have to give myself permission to let go of that other thing because I knew I couldn't do it all. And in doing that, that helped propel me further into helping people.
I love it. So highlighting here, I want the listeners to understand this, that we all have this pivotal moment in our life. And when we think back on that time, it's one moment. And that's what we conceptualize as the moment. But you articulated brilliantly that it's a process, that there are emotions involved, that it's a grappling of those emotions. It's almost like, yes, we have to let go, and we ultimately mourn that letting go because it's allowing this old self to rest so we can then take on the new self and move forward. So the shame and courage, like, oh, I can feel that energy of you cannot have courage unless you're presented with fear, right?
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
like we have to be putting these moments. So we think to ourselves sometimes, why am I going through this? Well, you're going through this because you're about to be revealed your purpose and your potential, because you don't know how courageous you are until you have to be courageous.
Right. And I think it's that one of the questions we ask as coaches is, what's a potential first step you could take? You may know you have 1,000 steps to take, but you have to take one step.
Mhm.
And I kind of feel that over those years, I was taking a series of steps that was slowly moving me away from my old dream and toward a new dream. And it wasn't until I had maybe taken 100 steps that I realized I liked the new dream more than the old dream. And that was really exciting. And you use the term mourning. I was absolutely mourning the loss of my designer status. And when I cut my hair, that was a really big deal. When
Yeah.
I cut my hair and said, okay, I'm not going to be the artsy guy on the outside. I'm always going to be the artsy guy on the inside.
Yeah.
That was kind of my proof to the world that I had uh, decided to really embrace this new identity.
You're still a designer. You
I
still
will always be a
design,
designer.
right?
I will always be a designer. Right.
And even designing a coaching session, for example, designing a consulting session, any of those, when you're speaking with someone, your analogies are so designer specific because it's like, I'm going to paint this picture so you can understand. So it's still at your core, it's just being utilized in a different, more potential way.
It really is. And I think it's funny you should mention that because visualization is something I love to do with my consulting clients and my coaching clients. And it's something that a lot of us have a hard time doing. I guess I always had a big imagination and people were, my teachers and stuff would say, all right, let's get back to reality now here, Mark. And so some of my clients are pretty uncomfortable with it.
Mhm.
But I might say, like, let's picture what success looks like for this week or this month or this year? Or, how would you like to feel?
Yeah.
Sort of painting a picture for how you would like to feel at the end of this process. And having people do that, it releases all of these positive endorphins, and you see them become lighter. And then that helps motivate them to take those 1,000 steps because they can imagine it, even if they've never seen it.
Right.
And I find that I always loved doing that for myself. And I find that really a fun exercise to do with clients.
I appreciate you bringing the science in that in terms of the endorphins that are released, because on a spiritual level, it taps us back into our true essence of who we are, which is found in the inner child. So before we were able to analytically think, we were in theta brainwave, and it's almost like a dreamlike state where we live in the world of possibility through imagination. We never change. The only thing that changes is we conform to social norms. And I always find that when we give ourselves permission to imagine and see what we want, all of a sudden the how reveals itself. And it's almost like it illuminates. And so I call this the toddler approach, because this is how toddlers learn. And this is how we learn if we give
Right.
ourselves permission to. And so I love that. I'm glad you brought that up.
But as you say, we need to open ourselves up for that.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this is a parallel, but freshman year of college, I remember one of my professors said, starting from this moment forward, I want you to always have a pad of paper and a pen by your bedside, because you're going to wake up with inspiration. And by the time in the middle of the night, and by the time you wake up for the day, you're going to forget that inspiration. And so I've been doing that since I was 18 years old.
And you still do
And
that.
I still, every night I do. I mean, so I don't end up waking up with inspiration every night, but I'd say 3 or 4 times a week, I write something down, and without fail, I notice that I wrote something, and I say, what did I write last night? And then I say, oh my God, that's amazing. That's what I've been thinking. And that goes back to that dream state. It's actually a dream state.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like that breakthrough between, the unconscious and the conscious.
Right.
And so that's something that I've trained myself to do, because this professor taught me this, 35, 40 years ago.
That's amazing. So we've known each other how long? And I'm learning this information now. This is awesome, because this is the way that I understand this from a spiritual and universal activity. It's your higher self speaking to you, because you're out of the way. And when I say you
Right.
are out of the way, your analytical, conformed to social norms is out of the way. And it's like, you're an open vessel to say, bring in my genius and let's
Right.
tap into this.
Right.
Oh, what an amazing professor to set you up for success.
Oh my God. And when you think about it, we
Writing
were all
that
a bunch
down.
of 18-year-olds,
Yeah.
so we were like putty in his hands.
So I'm writing dream journal.
That's great.
Legit.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm going to back up a bit, because there was something you mentioned in your story of, at the beginning, you identified that you make people happy, and that was your purpose, but you didn't know it was your purpose.
Right.
I'm highlighting this for a second because I believe this is super important on our journeys, because we get tied up with the how, the why, the what, the analytical labeling of things. And it wouldn't be a conversation with me, Mark, if I didn't bring up a quote. So Alan Watts would say often, you can't get wet by the word water. It does not matter what you call anything that you're working on. It's the interpretation and the energy that's flowing into that. So I say that to say, if we give ourselves permission to be and flow, we'll figure out what it's actually called later. And chances are someone else is going to call it something different. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just be in that energy. And once we realize, hey, my job is to make people happy and not to please other people, but to make them happy by being Mark, by being
Right.
Eric,
Right.
then that creates that next level that we can stand on that platform to say, okay, what's the next step towards my actual purpose? These are those steps. So bringing in a metaphor here, a marathon runner who's never ran a marathon, right? They first have to have the thought, I'm going to run a marathon. And then they have to take a step
Mhm.
and then another step. And it's one step after another until eventually they're crossing the finish line, right? That
That's so good.
same thing happens every day. So you're on this journey of identifying your true purpose, right?
Mhm.
And as you're on this journey, you're becoming a manager. Like you're climbing the hierarchical ladder with simply and profoundly being you.
Right.
As you're tapping into this purpose, I want to get your knowledge around purpose and leadership. And maybe they're separate, maybe they're together, but I would
Oh,
love.
they're together.
Oh,
We know they're together.
Hey, I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to speculate because you're the expert here. And yeah, I want to hear you rip about purpose and leadership.
Absolutely. Well, we're all we're all the experts in our own life, So that's something I learned. Um, it was interesting working. So I work for a guy named Danny Meyer, who in that world of hospitality and is really one of the sort of gurus of a sort of new way of doing business. And he didn't really use the word purpose very much, but he did use the word care. And so that was something. Care was a very important thing to Danny and is to his company. Um, and one of the things that I learned is as I did grow and as I did sort of move up that corporate ladder, I realized that it was not less important for me to share my purpose. It was more important. And the reason I believe that's so is that people will filter themselves in to an organization and self-select into an organization that has a clear purpose. They will also filter themselves out if they hear the purpose and they don't want to deal with that purpose, right?
Mhm.
I think about the company Patagonia. Their purpose is to save our mother planet. So what someone might see as a burden, someone who doesn't want to save their mother planet, someone else will see as inspiration and say, if I'm going to sell t-shirts or I'm going to do spreadsheets or I'm going to drive a truck, I want to drive a truck for a company that wants to save its mother planet. And I think that's brilliant because it takes guts to say that because you might alienate people. You could theoretically alienate people. And that includes customers, by the way.
Right.
Um, you know, leave me alone. I don't want to hire purpose. I just want to buy some boots. Fair enough. But those people who do select into that will become outrageously loyal. They will become zealots. And that includes the staff. And so, we all have grunt work in our jobs, right? Someone's got to clean the toilet, someone's got to balance the checkbook, someone's got to do all of that stuff that might not be the most exciting. So if you can connect it to something bigger than yourself, it makes it so much more meaningful. And from a business standpoint, it also means that people are going to stay
Mhm.
and you'll have more accountability among the team because they'll teach one another how to behave. It becomes tribal in a lot of ways where it becomes this oral tradition that yes, you need to have your standards written down, but how they manifest themselves becomes tribal. And I firmly believe that that starts with the leader articulating a purpose. And the more I grew and the more confident I became, you use the word spiritual a lot. I believe I became a spiritual leader
Mhm.
because I was hiring experts because I was hiring experts at things that I didn't know about. I'm not an accountant, but I know enough about accounting to be dangerous.
Right.
I'm not a mixologist, but I hired people who really could express themselves because that was their purpose, to make the world happy through incredible cocktails. I'm not a chef, but if I could find someone whose purpose in life was to feed people, I I was surrounded myself. I then was able to surround myself with all of these people who were so motivated to be themselves because they opted in to my tribe. And I just had the best career because of that.
Yeah.
So you could say I was selfish because I wanted to surround myself with like-minded people. But I believe together we made my teams made the world a better place.
Man, that's so beautiful. And it ah, it takes me to a recent podcast guest said appreciation appreciates.
Mhm.
And so in that philosophy, that idea, that understanding, and likewise, purpose appreciates as well. Because
Absolutely.
because you identified the more you spoke your purpose, the more it created a guide of who to hire. Because if you have a purpose to enhance people's lives, then hiring someone that's going to allow them to express themselves is meeting your purpose, which is also
Mhm.
allowing their purpose. And then, oh yeah, by the way, the customers can feel that.
Absolutely.
A bartender who is fully engaged with someone who is like very human centric is going to make their lives, their day so much better, which is going to create this Ubuntu mentality of I truly am better because we are. Like I am because we are.
Right.
And a couple of things. I love this because what to me what you identified was the interpretation of our thoughts. So
Mm.
the Patagonia example, it allows the opportunity for a company to say this exists and we can either gripe and bitch about it,
Right.
or we can be like, we stand for this. Oh, yeah,
Right.
we're going to make really cool clothes, but everything we do and our decisions are going to be based on Mother Earth's perpetuation of her health. Right.
Right. Right.
And likewise, dude, this is like brought chills to me when you said this. Cleaning the toilet. Like,
Mhm.
if we can come to this with, I'm so happy and grateful that I have the opportunity to clean a toilet inside of business that I
Mhm.
believe in, it's way different than "Ugh, I got to clean the toilet." No,
Right.
be grateful that there's a toilet to clean
Right.
because that means we're moving in the right direction.
And that is so true. And then that is where the challenge for the senior leader is to make sure that she or he doesn't ever forget their purpose, which is, if you think about back to what I said earlier, to empower people to, help them advance in their whatever their purpose is. So it's important in sorry, hold on one second. I have to remember something. So it's important to remember that we have to appreciate people for expressing their own purpose.
Mhm.
So for example, if I'm the senior leader and someone is that bartender or that cook or that porter, it's important for me to recognize the beauty of their work. And so if I can say, thank you so much, this floor looks incredibly clean. Amazing. Thank you very much. I appreciate your work. Um, thank you so much for, wiping down that counter. Thank you so much for making such a beautiful hamburger. Mm. And showing that gives that person motivation, but it just puts all that positive energy out into the world, because there will be times where you might need to be more intense.
Mhm.
And if those intense moments are within the context of positive feedback, and note, I didn't say negative, I said intense.
Right.
There are times where you say, I need a hamburger now in the restaurant business,
Yeah. Yeah.
but if it's within the context, if they hear that within the context of this person is on my side, they are also, under those times of stress, more likely to produce something quickly and at a high level that is up to our standards.
So ultimately, trust formulated from the leadership mentality of everyone is putting their purpose first. And therefore, like everyone understands the attributes and everyone, then it gives you permission to say, I need a hamburger now. Like
Right.
we don't have to
Absolutely.
hug every single time that we chat.
No,
We,
right.
we do sell on occasion. However, we don't have to every time because
Right.
sometimes it's now. But that opens the door for whatever communication style needs to happen in that moment based on the circumstances. Am I hearing that
Right.
correct?
You are. And what I don't want to forget is the organizational purpose. Because if your purpose in life is one thing and mine is another and another, and none of us are serving the organizational purpose,
Yeah.
then we're just a commune. We're
Right.
not, so since I'm a business leader, it is
Correct.
important, but if each of our purposes are connecting to that,
Yeah.
our organizational purpose, and that organizational purpose fuels our personal purpose, it's this positive feedback loop that really makes our business unbreakable.
Yes. And there's the key word, the key phrase, positive feedback loops, because that is what creates success. It sets us up for success because we create a habitual pattern that
Mhm.
feeds off of it and we don't have to think about it. And everyone knows when we automate things, it makes life easier. When we automate things that enhance our lives, yes,
Yeah,
sign me up for it.
that's so true. So true.
So, a couple questions
Mhm.
before we start before we end this. Question number 1 is what would you tell someone? What advice would you give or what tool would you provide to someone who is like, I know I'm not living towards my purpose. I'm not even sure if I know what my purpose is. I know that what I'm doing now is not it. What advice or coaching tip or tool would you provide this person?
Well, based on some of the things that I just mentioned, I would ask them if they have a concept of where they would like to be. So many times we focus on the things that aren't right without visualizing what we want to be right. So let's say it's a relationship challenge. Let's say it's not even a personal let's say it's your boss, whatever. Since I'm definitely not a relationship expert. Um, if are thinking I'm complaining about my boss doesn't have my back, envision how you would like your boss, how would you like your relationship to be with your boss? And then envision what your role in that relationship is, because you can only control what you can control, right? And then ask yourself, what could I do to improve that relationship? I can only own 50% of it, but
Mhm.
what can I own of my 50%? Now, that won't get you all of the way there, but it might give you some insights where you might realize you're falling short in a certain area. You know what? I'm not the most reliable person, or you know what? I don't ever say hello to her. You
Yeah.
know, she doesn't see me as a human being because maybe I don't always behave like one. Yeah.
Right.
Now, if it's something a little more permanent, like kind of like what I had, where I was in an industry that I no longer wanted to be in, and I was 27 years old, and I was wondering like, oh crap, what am I going to do now? I also started to then, I sort of doubled, I did both, right, for a while. And I
Yeah.
straddled those lines as I was exploring other things. And what I realized with the restaurant industry was I hadn't fallen in love with the restaurant industry. I fell in love with the people I was working with in the restaurant industry. And so that was helpful for me because my first thing was I don't want to leave design to move into the restaurant industry. I couldn't wrap my head around that.
Mhm.
But I could wrap my head around the firm I'm working in is good, but I'm not loving it. The restaurant I'm working in is awesome and I'm loving it. So maybe I'm not abandoning design. Maybe I'm just leaving this firm and going to this restaurant that I love.
Mhm.
So I felt that the stakes were lower. And then, like I mentioned earlier, once I made that change, everything changed. Everything opened up for me. And so I think that goes back to our coaching question is, what are some potential next steps you can take?
Yeah.
You don't have to solve for the next 10 years. Maybe you can solve for the next 10 days or the next 10 weeks or the next 10 months and see how it goes. And if it doesn't go well, you can probably go back to something else.
Yeah. Brilliant advice. But then back to the imagery of see it first, see it in your mind's eye. Because once you see it there, now it's a potential. Like
Right.
now it is possible. And when you see it and then you feel as though you're there, oh, that's when the money happens right there. And that takes a
So
while
true.
because it's very difficult when we're in a position of, I'm going to not negative emotions, lower frequency emotions. We'll say
Mhm.
that to where fear is driving our decisions. Once we allow ourselves to just in our mind begin to explore, oh man, the world of possibility opens up. So thank you. Thank you for that. That's a huge nugget.
Welcome.
Um,
Fear is a very strong demotivator.
it is.
And we're all victim. It's a fear of embarrassment, fear of being wrong, fear of, making a fool of yourself or of your family, or, we all have some baggage and fear doesn't go away, but it can be managed.
Absolutely. 100%. Thank you for adding to that. Last question. What what book comes to mind when I say, what have you read that's changed your life?
Wow. I might be having some recency bias here, but about 2 months ago, I read David Brooks' How to Know a Person. And a lot of people know David Brooks as a political commentator, but he writes this book as someone who's, I believe, in his 60s, who has always had a hard time connecting with people. And he did this analysis of himself about how to get to know people better. And by doing that, he made himself incredibly uncomfortable. He went on this journey and his revelations are really inspiring. And I really recommend the book because it's not a business book. It's not a self-help book. It's not a relationship book. It's just a book about his personal journey. And there are absolutely takeaways about what we can all do to break down barriers between fellow human beings.
That's awesome because with challenge comes change and challenge is always uncomfortable. And that uncomfortableness is where we discover who we are
Right.
and begin to tap into what are we capable of doing? What is our superpower? What do we have the ability to enhance in this amazing world that we live in?
Mm.
Um, so Mark, man, thank you so much. This was awesome. Always love chatting with you.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. And I love that we're traveling this path together.
Likewise, man. It's like we're on a river and we're not racing, we're not competing, but we're building one another up as we go. So I love that. where can the listeners find you if they want to expand in their leadership?
Sorry, Eric.
You're good. You're good.
Holding in that cough. I was like, uh-oh.
I understand.
Woo! There we go.
Where can the listeners find you if they want to reach out for leadership advice, if they want to become the next great leader, or they have some goals that they want to accomplish and need some coaching, or super huge Fortune 500 companies that want to, continue expanding on this idea of humanity through leadership? Where can they find you?
Absolutely. Thanks, Eric. MaynardConsulting.net is my website. And I post a few times a week on LinkedIn. Mark Maynard is my name. And people frequently direct message me, and I always get back to people.
Awesome. And yes, if you haven't found him on LinkedIn, do it now. He is persistent in posting, and they're always creative. They're always thought-provoking, and I absolutely love it. So, guys, I hope you have loved this conversation as much as I have. It always feels like I'm chatting with a friend, and I mean, we cut it short this time because we can go for hours. And but I love the idea of bringing humanity through hospitality, because in the hospitality industries, the multiple hospitality industries, that's what we do. As a nurse, that's what we do, is bring a human element to the table every single day. We have the ability to make so much positive change in the world if we simply and profoundly be, and we be our true self. And I identify that if fear is there, then we're onto something, and we are going to move beyond that fear and conquer the world. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. Mark, thanks again, brother. This was amazing. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Thanks,
Absolutely. Eric. Guys, until next time, be well, be loved. Thank you for joining me on PEP Talks with Eric, where together we shift our focus, embrace connection, and drive towards a more fulfilling life. Remember, it's not just about where you're headed, but how you choose to travel along the way. As you continue your journey, know that you have the power to change lanes and focus on the path that leads to positivity, purpose, and connection. Let's stay connected and continue empowering your journey one commute at a time. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. And until then, be well, be loved.